Welcome to Real Leaders with Roshini, the podcast with real talk, real questions, real insight, and we hope real inspiration. For real. We're at Capitol Grill in downtown Minneapolis. My guest today is Don Shelby. He's truly a Renaissance man. Many know him as a longtime anchor on WCCO TV. He's won multiple awards. Currently, he's an environment and science reporter, among other things. Don, thank you for joining us.
I appreciate you asking me.
All right, there's so many areas I want to get into with you, but first, how did your past life play into what you do now?
How far back do you want to go?
Well, let's go back to what a lot of, the public might know is your life as, coming into people's living rooms every night on the 6 and 10 o'clock news.
I used to see lots and lots of terrible things happening in our world. And the constructs of journalism forced me, and properly so, to stay directly in the middle of all of that. But when the shows were over and late at night when you're going to sleep, you were thinking to yourself, there ought to be a law. I mean, somebody ought to stop that from happening. I'm tired of reporting these things. Something ought to be done. Somebody ought to grab somebody by the collar and just shake them and say, listen to what this material fact is telling you. And people would respond oftentimes with, in the world in which I lived, with an opinion. And I respect, as the Constitution kind of allows me and guides me to do, I respect the opinion, the right to express that opinion. But that doesn't guarantee, as many Americans are confused about this concept, that it means you must respect the opinion. And I think one of the worst things that's happened in the last 30 years in America is the elevation of the opinion to the level of fact. And so once retired, I was able to grab people by the collars and say, listen, for God's sakes, to the facts. Listen to the facts and let them guide you, and examine where your opinion comes from. Did you arrive at that through information and material fact, objective information, or did you just get that because you're politically inspired or you're trying to protect yourself in some way? And so I have been set loose is the answer. From being constrained to just giving people middle-of-the-road information, to recognizing that I have a role to play as a citizen to help guide people toward material facts that should rule the day. But in the world in which we live, it is almost impossible because there are so many opinions and so many uninformed opinions out there that are guiding policy.
So what is the general reaction to your newfound role and how you are grabbing people by the collars?
Oh, I get lots of people getting up and walking out of rooms, which is their absolute right. But I see as time goes by, more and more people are sitting and listening because I think there is a hunger for facts. But when facts get in the way of their confirmation bias, that is, they only want to hear information that somehow works within their preset mind and what they have formed as an opinion. If you present any information that goes up against that, they will reject it and walk out of the room. But others will kind of clench their teeth and listen to the information that's contrary to their previously held beliefs.
I want to go take that to your next project because it reminds me that you're working on your second book, and it is on the developing failure, in your words, of American journalism to meet the needs of voting citizens in a democracy. What do you mean by this? And why are you propelled to write this book?
Well, having served in basically the uniform of a journalist for 55 years and more, that I think that it's probably apparent to people that in the present situation, we're seeing the effect, going back to what I said about opinion, we're seeing the effect of social media taking the form of news. We are in the midst of investigations that tell us that we are being influenced by non-factual matter. There are pieces of information in social media right now that will tell people something they think looks factual because it will take the form of news, but we don't take the extra step of a citizen, and that is to find out what is that source of information, how reliable is that source of information. Is it someone trying to trick me? We do that as a matter of course. If somebody calls us on a cold call and says, I'd like to sell you some insurance, or I'd like to get you to donate to this foundation, I would like you to do, we automatically question those things. We say, well, I don't know you. I'm not sure that you're a valid operation, so I'm going to take a look at that. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who will just say, sure, how much money do you need, which is a terrible example of lack of self-protection, lack of self-awareness. So in this kind of instance, we're seeing so much information that is non-factual, that is influencing the way we think and the way we vote and the formations of our opinion, which we think is informed because we're relying on non-factual information we take as being valid information.
That's coming from sources that used to be very credible sources.
Exactly.
In some
right.
cases.
Yeah, in many cases, because somebody will put their name on it and say, so this is coming from somebody who I once saw as a representative of the right who was trustworthy, or somebody from a representative from the left who was trustworthy, so I trust that, and that goes back to that confirmation bias. I'm more apt to listen to things that conform with my own belief system than something that is to the right or to the left of the way that I have previously thought. So we also see opinion being raised to the level of a national spectator sport through cable television. Oftentimes there will be presenters, I'll call them presenters, in the old days they might call them anchors on every show, who are simply the purveyors of positions, editorialists, if you will. And so both have them. So if you watch CNN or MSNBC, you're going to get a slant. And if you're going to watch a Fox, you're going to get a slant. And they will pick those representatives who will populate a screen. There'll be, boxes of heads, talking heads of people who should or should not be presenting.
Some people, I've heard the term angertainment.
Yes, well, that's very good. I mean, I hadn't heard that, but that is exactly the truth. Angertainment for the people who dislike that position, but also it is like candy to the people who want to believe that position to be true. So in the current moment, we're seeing that happening with the investigations by the House of Representatives and the questions of the release of transcripts of the president's own actions. Some people are saying, everything's okay. See, there's nothing to see here. And other people are saying, holy mackerel, we've got a constitutional crisis. Well, one or the other of those is
So,
true.
Don, part of my problem is I watched the headlines today as a former TV reporter myself, and now as a talk show host, I can share opinion openly, and I love that. But I still have that mind of the TV reporter. It's deep within me. And I get very frustrated with people's lack of discernment, equal to how frustrated I get with traditional journalism and reporters and how they're covering the news right now.
Well, hence my grabbing people by the shirt collars and just shaking them and saying, pay attention. Listen to this. This is important
Why aren't
information.
people more discerning, though? Regular people.
Lazy in terms of citizenship. Now, I use citizenship with a capital C. It's not the citizenship that would get you in trouble if you talked about it in terms of immigration or the current problems we're now facing with the current occupant and the issues that started, I think, primarily with Syria and the influx of people around the world to try to escape that war condition. And then, of course, the what President Trump called the invasion, where people were trying to leave their homes because by some standard, the withdrawal of support money from these countries have made those countries lawless, and people are escaping, in essence, to try to save their lives. And we have drawn this line in the sand, and so we have an immigration problem on one side and an open society that takes the plaque on the Statue of Liberty, the Emma Lazarus quote that says that "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, hopeless, tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden shore." I'm sort of the Emma Lazarus guy. I believe that is the purpose of the country. But beyond all of that, we are just in a situation where the opinion rules the day and the opinion is uninformed. And so I'm in a position now of just saying, stop, you're being fed a line. You cannot back up what you're saying. And I use that in terms of climate change primarily. So there is a group of people who are absolute deniers that climate change is taking place, and there are people who say, yes, it is happening, which includes something 98% of all scientists working in atmospheric sciences in the world are saying, no, it is happening, and it is an existential threat to life. And there are people on the other side, a goodly group of people, maybe 30%, of Americans saying, nah, it's a hoax, because they heard somebody say it's a hoax.
Right.
And so when you say, well, I'll listen to you say it's a hoax, give me proof that it is
right, the
hoax.
Backing for why you just said that.
And also give me the alternative theory for that which is right before your eyes, and that is the temperatures are going up, and that the desertification is taking place across the world, and food supplies are being limited, and water is being limited, and sea levels are rising. Give me the alternative fact that would explain why that's happening.
Why that's all happening.
And then they can't do that. Mm-hmm. They can't do it.
So the work that you are doing now, I mean, it's heady stuff. It's exhausting. You have to really have the energy to try to educate people, also try to influence people. Have you put a date on when you may stop doing this work, or are you going to do this work till your last breath?
Yes, to the last breath. And, let's be frank, Roshini, I'm 72 now, and I've got, fortunately, a father who lived to 92. But the last years of his life were not very productive because of ailments and what have you. So I've tried to calculate. I think I've got 6 years of productive life left, not life itself. I'll still be breathing probably.
But where you feel that you could have the energy for this work.
Yes. So I've got to say, I've got a lot of time to do my job. I don't. I have to take a career of 55 years to accomplish whatever I accomplished in 55 years and pack all of that factual matter into the 6 years, productive years that I think I've got left to really get. Because otherwise, you get to be 90 and people just go, isn't he cute? And they just...
Well, I applaud you for even coming up with that calculation. I don't know how exactly you did it, but I like that. I mean, it gives you also, like, I'm a marathon runner. It's nice when there's a sense of when the end of this race is going to be. And you've already done a lot, and I think in 6 years you can do a lot toward this goal of educating and enlightening and hopefully influencing the right people to take these issues seriously.
But it takes 18-hour days, 7 days a week, which is not what I thought retirement was.
What does the
going
wife
to be.
have to say about that?
Well, you'd have to know Barbara Shelby to understand what she thinks about it. Because if I'm in the house, we've been married 45 years. If I'm in the house for 4 hours straight, sitting with her, she will say, don't you have something to do? Would you stop trying to rearrange the dishwasher? Would you please not tell me how to fill out the bills because I've been doing this for 45 years and you didn't even pay any attention, but now you're suddenly interested in my business.
And she does not need your help at this point.
She does not need my help, and she's never needed my help. And I offer it constantly. And she would just go, please
so
find
she
something
applauds
to do.
these 18-hour days of yours.
Yes, she she enjoys them because.
Does she know you put like a 6-year timeline on this?
I think I'd hate to tell her that because she would just rue the 6-year timeline.
We won't
She
burst
would go,
that
"Oh
bubble
my
for her.
gosh,
We'll let her.
She would worry about that. What am I going to do in 6 years? He's going to be here all the time.
So on that note, how do you unwind and how do you relax? And do you and your lovely wife have special date nights to get away from it all?
We take trips together, so we don't have date nights. I will find a week or 2 weeks where we can be together, just us. And so that's the way we do that. We sort of consolidate and compact our time together. And
you see her other times, though, right?
I see her every day.
Every day.
Every day I see her as she kind of shoos me out the door. Please go. And I'm happy with that. And we've learned how to live that way because for all the time we've been married, unfortunately, the job, as a doctor would tell you, as a journalist would tell you, as a firefighter would tell you, as a police officer would tell you, the job really does come first. At
least the schedule of the job.
That's right.
Takes priority over everyone's
now,
schedule.
I can't tell you all of the birthdays and all of the parties and all of the special moments that I couldn't go to because I was deep into an investigation that the station was on the line for, maybe could be sued if we didn't give our full attention to the investigation, or something like 9/11 happened, you're on the air for 23 hours straight. The war in Iraq, 1 and 2, those were round-the-clock things, and so you miss deals. And I learned how to trick my children, which they later appreciated because I knew that I'm going to be deeply involved in some investigation. I will not be able to make the actual date of your birthday, the 31st of July. I will not make that, but I don't tell them that. But they're not fastidious calendar readers either. And so you say, your birthday is day after tomorrow, when it was yesterday. And so they think, well, that's the 31st. And so
at some point, though, they get to be past 12, and they can read a calendar on their own, Don. I love it. I love the secret life that many of the viewers didn't know you were living. And what kind of damage has been done to your children's psyche because of this?
I would like to think none, because I've got 3 daughters who are miraculous women, incredibly strong women, very accomplished women, very involved women. They got that from their mother, and I think the citizen part they got from me. They are extremely productive. One is an author. She a master's degree, Columbia University, got a master's degree from Cornell in landscape architecture, who's now the chief of resiliency for New York City. So she nature person, and the author writes cli-fi, and the youngest daughter is an LFMT, has her own business called the Family Development Center, and works with women, reproductive rights, grief counseling on perinatal, prenatal, postnatal, infant death, and it's just they're just amazing people and deeply involved in the moment, very aware, vast consumers of information and sorters of information. So they're bringing a critical eye to all information, and they learned that, I guess. But you were talking about unwinding. The way I unwind is nature, anything.
I understand you're a primitive survival specialist.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
All right. My father was an archaeologist, and I have always been fascinated with how well human beings survived and adapted when they didn't have technology. how did they live? How did they advance? How did their brains work? How did they figure things out that were taught us in school? They had no schools, of course. How did they make a thing? How did they know that you could bang on this rock and it would split and make a sharp kind of edge, and then they could use that to do any number of things, which developed over 100,000 years until somebody invented iron and bronze and copper, and they were able to move into that and develop. So primitive technology is everything from taking a look at how the genius took a spear, just a normal spear. I think I could figure that out if I were primitive. I could go, well, there's a long stick. I could put something sharp on the end of it, and I could maybe bring down something to feed my family. But who invented the atlatl? What guy or woman understood the physics of taking a stick and attaching it to the end of a spear and making, in essence, your arm longer so that you could throw it twice as fast as you could throw it with your arm? Now that's physics. That's physics. Somebody 100,000 years ago decided, well, yeah, all you have to do is lengthen your arm with this other stick and attach it to the end of the spear, and you can throw it faster. How did that come about? So I'm interested not only in the primitive development of these talents and these skills, but what have we lost in terms of having all of this ready-made information available to us?
All this automatic.
It's automatic. And one of my greatest fears, Roshini, is that I've got grandchildren. The grandchildren have easy access to instant information that we are, I think, through DNA, and I can't prove this, but I would imagine this is true, atrophying a part of our brains that represented the creative part that moved us forward. We had to figure out ways instead of just, oh, here's a book, here's the web page.
Google it.
Just Google it. I don't have to think. I don't have to imagine solutions to problems anymore. I'll just Google what are the possible solutions, and that may not be all of the answers, because some of the best original answers come out of the creative mind. And I'm wondering whether this is atrophying, because I have read those things which I trust out of some major university surveys. We think we have 5 senses. They're now saying, no, human beings have 29 senses.
Wow.
But
that's a whole other book, Don.
Right. Those senses have fallen away to disuse and atrophied so much in our system that we don't use them anymore, because we have other guides in our life that take the place of that. And that's where my concern is, that the artificial is replacing the real. And so that's why I take my grandchildren in sort of survival situations, and I took my children in survival situations. Put you in the woods, make you lost. What do you feel like when you're lost? How do you get out of that? What is in you, in your brain, that can figure out the way home?
And get out of, maybe you were in panic situation, get
Absolutely.
out of that.
How do you
so
calm your
yourself.
body? How do you calm your mind so that you can get to a place where you can figure out a solution? Well, the parallel to all of that, and there is a parallel. So being a primitive technology specialist, I would say, and interested in that, really is just a way of trying to figure out where we are today and what we've lost about that skill level that came from primitive human beings that advanced us to this farthest point that we currently are in. And have we given up something in our ability to survive by replacing the real with the artificial?
Don Shelby, you've given us a lot to ponder, far more than 6 years worth of content to ponder. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you for doing this kind of program, Roshini, and you're the best at it.
Thank you. Until next time, keep it real.